tope fishing, boats or shore. Doesn't really matter. If you need to make your own rigs, your own traces, there's a few things that you need to know. Stuff that I couldn't really find on YouTube when I first started. What to buy, what to use, where to use it. These days there's a lot more on YouTube now with some really good anglers doing their own like vlogs and bits and bobs. But you still don't see a lot of how they make their rigs. You see them fishing, but not what they're doing. So today I'm going to be making some bite ends for a boat trip that I'm potentially doing tomorrow, as long as the weather holds out. And now I'm making my bite ends basically. A bite end, for anyone who doesn't know, is the piece of wire between the hook and the first swivel. So all tope rigs usually have a bite end of some description. You can also use really heavy mono as a bite end. Personally, I'm not really a fan of heavy mono, especially if you're using J hooks, not circle hooks. If you're using circle hooks, the argument is in the corner of its mouth, the wire's not needed, just use a heavy mono. But there are rules to that. But today I'm going to be making a wire bite end. And the wire I'm going to be making is wire that you need to crimp. You can buy knottable wires, which are really good. But there are things I don't like about knottable wires for tope. They're just not as strong in my opinion. They're perfectly fine. You can catch fish on them, but my preference isn't that for my own personal fishing. My preference is AFW 90-pound shark cable. It's a 49 strand wire. It's very thin. It's 0.8 mil. That's all it is, 0.8 mil. Very thin. And with that, you need to use the right crimps. There. So these are AFW and they are in size 4F8. That's a bulk pack there. It's a very small crimp, but it's a very thick walled crimp. The wall of itself is actually quite thick compared to cheaper crimps. Then we got an AFW Mighty Mini power crane. You don't need to buy AFW ones if you don't want. You can buy Cox&rawle. You could buy Varum. You could buy Cedra. You can as long as they're strong quality swivels. Cheap ones, when they're under tension and they're pulled, don't rotate properly. So you know a cheap swivel straight away. There's nothing wrong with cheap swivels as long as they're strong enough. But you do want the swivel to spin under tension. And cheap ones, when you pull them apart with a tool and spin them, they don't move freely. So that's why I use quality swivels for. And for this demonstration, we're going to be using Cox&rawle Matsu Extras. This is an 8.0, which is SCR45 for a hook code. I will be buying the normal versions in a 10.0. The wire gauge is not as thick and chunky. The reason why I'm making them up with this particular hook is where we're planning on fishing tomorrow is very heavy tides running through. You're using 18 to 24 ounces of lead to hold deck. So it's very heavy flow. So if you've got a 40 or 50 pound tope on, you're putting quite a lot of pressure on it, pulling it back up through the tide. That's why I'm using the extra. But generally speaking, I think that the extra might be a little heavy for most of my tope fishing. It has a place, but I don't think it's necessary for all of my tope fishing. So I will have a mixture. I do also use other circle hooks depending on when the time comes. They're not Matsus in shape or demons like the Mustad, more rounded ones. These are more like a J hook kind of shape. They're slightly offset and they've just got an intern point. These are really good hooks, especially for bigger baits. Sometimes when we want to avoid a dogfish, we'll cut a mackerel in half and we'll hook the head end on and we'll also hook the tail on. So it's like two baits coming off. Makes it too wide for a dogfish to get around on. And it does help if the dogfish are a pain. And these hooks are a bit better for those wider baits. But so to start with, you've got your piece of wire that we've pre-cut. It's ready to go. We're going to take one of our hooks, which is a Cox&rawle Matsu Extra in 8.0. I'm going to put the wire through the eye once, and we're going to go back through the same direction, which is going to make a big loop. Yep. And we're going to go through the loop of the wire once with the tag and bring that down. So it's made an overhand loop with the hook inside the loop. We're going to contort that down, and then we're going to take the tag end back through that loop one more time, which has now made this. Then we're going to hold the tag end and the body together in this hand, and we're going to go in the back of the loop with these fingers, and we're just going to pull them down to make that loop nice and tight and small. It's very, very, very small now. There we go. Right. Now we're going to take one of our AFW 4F8 crimps, which is designed for this wire. And we're going to bring it down. We're going to put the tag end in, and then with this finger I'm going to push the tag end and the body together so that there's no tension on the crimp, and I'm going to bring the crimp right to the end of the Flemish Isle offshore loop. We're going to hold them apart so that they're sat in each barrel of the crimp. Because if you don't, and the tag end and the tag end and the body cross and you crimp it, it might trap the wire in a bad angle. Now I'm going to take my crimping tool, which is the correct size ring, and we're going to leave, as I said before, we're going to leave a very, very, very small amount of the crimp on this side out. It's going to make a splay on the end of the crimp, and then we're going to hold the tag end and the piece together, and we're going to hold them out so that they're no longer in together, to make sure they don't get trapped. And we're going to squeeze them down. Now that they're squeezed down, you can really give it a good squeeze, both hands. And now got that lovely splay. If you can see there in the crimp, there's a bend in the middle of the crimp and a splay or a flare either side of the crimp. The most important end to have the flare on is always the loop end. It allows the two bits of wire coming out to come around into the loop and not put an unnecessary angle on them. This is the way to get the maximum strength out of it. Slightly back to front the first way. Now the crimp needs to go on first, and your swivel then goes on. Same thing we did before, through the same way to make a loop through itself. So now the swivel is within the loop. Contort it down to make it smaller, and then back through the same way you went through again to create your Flemish eye offshore loop. Same process, holding the body in the tag and then sliding the loop down to make the loop as small and neat as possible. You don't want to overdo it because then you'll make it a little tight. Just go down until you feel some resistance. Same thing with your crimp, like we've done before, squeeze them down, push your crimp right down to the end. Remember, always leave a slight gap on your crimp. Perfect. And now we're going to just trim up all these tags. Make sure you leave a few mil on each one. We're talking 2 or 3 mil tags coming out the back of the crimp. You don't need to leave any tag if you don't want to, but there's a reason why I leave the tag, and that's because I will now put a knot puller into either end of this and check it, and I will look to see if that has slipped in any way, shape or form. If it has slipped, then I will just redo the whole rig. I will not risk using something that has slipped at all. The Flemish eyes can pull in when you do this test, but the main point is that the crimp has not slipped. So I've got 2 knot pullers now attached into either Flemish eye, and I will check this now and make sure.